Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studios in Atlanta, Georgia, it's time for High Velocity Radio.
Lee Cantor here with Katie Galley, another episode of High Velocity Radio. Yep. So tell us about Order.
So I worked with Matt while I was at, and still am, with Tarkett Flooring. So he helped us bring our brands to life. We actually met Matt through one of the large agencies that we were typically, working with lots of layers in the organization, and found that we were more and more requesting to just have conversations directly with Matt and Ehsan, also part of Order Productions. So when they, kind of split off from that agency and started their own, it was more of a way to just have that direct conversation without all the overhead that comes from typical large agencies that we would work with. And
then he's providing the service that's what you wanted anyway.
Exactly.
You didn't need all the infrastructure that the larger agency provided. Mm-hmm. So you just wanted the video content.
The creative content. So whatever that might be, if it's video or helping with, understanding brand or bringing brand to life in many different ways. So that could be through several different avenues, but certainly video is a strong asset.
So we take a pretty fundamental approach of understanding the brand's promise, understanding who tends to benefit from that promise, and then telling the story to bring those two things together. Well, the first thing that we always do is a discovery phase. And so we don't really focus too much on where they were, but just really want to understand where they want to go and really want to understand the emotion behind it. And one of the first meetings that we had, and Mausi reminded me of this, is we actually asked them to bring an object that reminded them or sort of painted the picture for the brand so that we could talk about the brand objectively and figure out what the brand really stands for.
It was really interesting to kind of see.
So this was the first time for you?
It was the first time.
Right. So everybody was learning together, right?
That's right. That we had been through an experience like that. So it was really helpful, even for our executives, for our company, to see what each individual believes the brand represents.
Because everybody thought in their head, everybody was thinking similarly, but obviously it was a lot of disparate things.
Right. And then you can look at what we believe we bring to the table and who we want to be, who we believe our brand is, and how we've articulated that in the past. And you can start to see it's not always aligned, right? And so going through an experience like that, that felt very authentic versus a typical kind of process map and whiteboard and which you would typically do with an agency, being able to kind of cut to the chase was really beneficial.
And also, when we start to get into production or we start to bring ideas to the table, it's important to have that alignment from the stakeholders to make sure that we're telling the right story or we're approaching it the right way. And that really starts to build the foundation or a launch point from what we can execute from, so that we can have a very, very laser focus on what that story is and what that idea is, and making sure that it pays off and aligns with the vision.
Because part of that is to then get an agreement from the room of, okay, this is what we're aiming at, or this is how we see future us.
Yeah, so that's sort of the next level that we take into what we do when we start to make a film, whether it's a commercial or a film for social or whatever outlet that it might be, is that we want to make sure that it's telling that story, but that it's also paying off the brand attribute, and having that alignment for that is very critical. But along the way, we want to make sure that story continues to improve, and so we need to ask ourselves: does this decision make the story better? And if everyone's aligned about what the story needs to be, then we can all make that decision objectively and take some of the subjectivity off of the table.
Now, Matt, for you, when you start working with a company like this and you start doing work that's really getting to the heart of what they believe and the why of what they do, does that impact the culture, or could it impact the culture of the company? Because once they see themselves this way, then they're like, we're this, not that. And now maybe I'm this type of worker, so I want to work for a company that believes what I believe. So it could help in recruiting. It could touch other areas than just selling one item.
It absolutely does.
And that's absolutely the goal. And that's part of the reason to have the importance of having the alignment throughout the organization, is because whatever that campaign idea is or whatever that persona is we want that to be consistent, from the culture internally, so that no matter where the end user experiences that, it's consistent, right? And so absolutely that alignment is sometimes it works both ways. Sometimes we come up with an idea and the organization can get behind it. Sometimes we have that insight and it becomes an internal campaign for the organization as well as the consumer facing aspect of it. So
now, how did you kind of get your career to this point here? Did you always start out in film, or what was the initial?
I was in advertising here in Atlanta for 20 years. And started out as a designer and worked my way up.
From an art side?
Correct.
Not the copy side, more the art side?
Art and art direction, and then creative direction after that.
And then you got into filmmaking at some point, or you leveraged film during that path?
Yes, film was always my preferred medium. And when I started working with Ehsan Abbasi, who is now my business partner, we really had a lot of the same viewpoints about the power of film and the medium of film, and we worked really well together. And we said, you know what, we really want to focus on this, and so that is the leaping off point for us to start the company.
So now, film. Did you ever create your own films that weren't kind of advertising driven? That it was kind of a passion, or?
We are in post production now on a documentary that we shot in Nepal. The first couple months of this year, we were in Nepal for 21 days shooting a documentary called Blue Kangling, and we're in post-production on that currently.
So now the activity of doing a film or a documentary, how much different is it than doing an ad or an advertising campaign?
We employ the same steps, same techniques, same fundamentals of storytelling, and a lot of the same process. So even our presentations to our clients they look more like an EPK for a film than the typical agency, presentation of a concept. Seeing agencies through a lot of new business pitches, I found that at the end of the day, we were pitching the process and we weren't pitching the product, which was the messaging. And I saw an opportunity there to say, you know what, if we can have a great product and we can. That's what we do, and that's what we focus on. Mausi and I were having a conversation earlier. The process shouldn't even be part of the conversation. That should be, sort of the cost of entry, and not even including your client in that, is added value. If you can just focus on the product and have a great story.
Right. It's like, what outcome do they desire, and then deliver that. How it happens is less important, really.
Right. And less of the daily conversation and grind, right, on the relationship, because, you don't get mired down in the process.
Right. Because they're like, where's this? And it just becomes friction.
That's right.
And then we should all be focusing on what is the outcome.
That's right. And so we try to have each one of our touch points or milestones in the process is to have a tangible thing that we can look at. That is the quest that we are on right now, is to find brands that know who they are or are open to discovering who they are, and really being able to put a fine point on that, because that's really where we feel like you're going to get the best investment for your story, is to know who you are.
And to your point earlier, when you were saying, sometimes people don't know how to articulate who they want to be or what they're about. I think the more that you can have the creatives in the business, or the people who are really passionate about what they want their brand to be, speaking directly with the creatives.
Right, creative to creative.
That's right.
You probably have a better outcome than 3 middle managers.
Exactly.
And the accountant and the
Every
creative.
time somebody hears the information, it's understood through their lens.
Right.
And so every time it has to go through multiple lenses, it ends up being compromised in the end. So having that direct
or diluted just a little, you start losing a little bit of the spirit.
That's right.
And then by the end, you're like, you got the commodity output again. And that's why everybody's stuff looks the same, because it went through 50 different eyes and hands.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So this has been rewarding for you guys. You're getting the results, and you're getting the stuff you're proud of.
Absolutely. And I think you will, as long as you have an open mind. So I think that's really important too. So when you're working directly with somebody like Order and they're bringing you different concepts, sometimes they see things different than you do, because you're so close to it. So it's really beneficial too, I think, when clients are able to have an open mind, because Order might be able to bring you an idea that you didn't ask for. So they're willing to do that. They're willing to say,
want them. That's part of what you're paying for, right?
Asked for, but we're also going to,
push you a little
bit. And that's what you really want.
Right. And that's an important part of this. And you, as a client, for you, Matt, you need a client that's open to that, because if they just want you to bring them back exactly what they want, they don't need you. Do it yourself, right?
That's exactly right.
If you don't want my creativity, then find somebody else, because that's my secret sauce. That's why we're here.
That's right. And our commitment is not, as you said before, art for art's sake. It's really telling the brand story, and for us to come up with the idea that brings that to life in the best way. And that's what we pride ourselves on. We don't come into to say we want to be creative and give us an opportunity to show you how creative we are. It's all rooted in the strategy and the thing that we agreed that you wanted to say.
Right.
If you have a story to tell, we can figure out how to do it.
And that's order-disruption.com?
Correct.
Mm-hmm. Good stuff, Matt. Thank you so much for sharing your story today.
Thank you very much for having us.
All right. This is Lee Cantor with Katie Galley. We will see you all next time on High Velocity Radio.